Hello everyone. Um, this video I'm gonna explain about my previous content. So I've given a preview on Flutter background service, which uses activity transition API. So in this video I'm gonna explain you the code, not very in depth, but I'm gonna give you the overview and also give you guys the GitHub link so they can look through the code and feel free to comment back. So yeah, the concept is pretty simple. I'm gonna explain the Flutter part first, and later we'll dive into the Android part. So what I actually did is, so if I open the app, that's the Flutter part. So if I open the app, uh, the main thing what we have to know is this toast is from the Android. I'm gonna show you where this toast is coming from. This one, and so thing is how we are getting these kind of events because Flutter has no idea on what's going on, where the data is coming from. So here I used a concept called platform channels. I'm gonna submit this link. In the platform channels, a thing called event channels. Event channel is I mean, I don't want to explain the event channel is. It's like a pipe thing. So what happens is you're in on the that side, you're in one side of a pipe, the pipe, the round pipe. So what you're doing is you're listening to the stream, and the Android side, it drops the data from the other side, and you'll get the result from the other side. So what happens is Android side gives the events, and the receiving part is the dart side. So I just followed the same concept here. So what I'm doing is, as soon as we launch the Flutter app, in my widget, I'm setting up the channel. This is the channel here, and what you'll do is it receives the broadcast. I'm using a list view widget. So what happens is I maintained a data list which is string. So what I'm doing is initially the data will be there won't be any kind of data if the list is empty. So it's gonna show initial data, but later when the Android service sends out streams from the other side, from the Android side, what happens is it gets the events gets added to the list. And I'm not doing any kind of crazy state management. I'm just setting the state whenever there's an event. So what happens this list gets added every time. So if you look at the video, whenever you're walking, it gets added. That's I mean, the Flutter side is pretty basic, but I'm gonna show you what's the Android side, how it's contacting. So let's move to, and I'm gonna drop this link over there. And before you get into the Android side, you have to make sure, I mean, you have to have a little bit idea on services. So I'm not going to explain the in-depth part of the service, the implementation of service. I mean, I can do that later, in Android part of videos. Just let me know you want to know how to create a background service, a foreground service. Even if you kill the app, it won't get killed. So I'm gonna leave this documentation in the video description. Let's move to Android code. Okay, so whenever you create a Flutter project, you'll have both iOS and Android. What I usually did is you'll have folders like this. I just opened this Android file in Android Studio. That's the only thing I did. As soon as you open some stuff, you will you won't find these kind of services here, but you will find main activity. So let's go to main activity, and I haven't done any kind of plugin stuff yet. I just directly coded down the main activity and treated this like an activity. If you're if you know something on Android, you'll get to know it. So what I usually did is as soon as the app gets started, I'm starting the service. I'm starting the background service with a foreground notification. To know more about foreground notification, how am I doing all the foreground stuff and how am I updating the pending intent, please look through the GitHub code because it's gonna take too much time for this video. my main aim for this video is to like explain what I'm doing here. So you have to make sure you have to know about services. So as soon as I bind the service, what I'm doing is I'm registering an event channel. So I created a method register event channel in the service. What happens is you cannot create event channels inside the Android service. That's like a Flutter specific code which comes from Flutter activity. That's the reason I have to create a bind service. So as soon as the service is binded, I'm sending the event channel. So what happens is this event channel, uh, I maintain like a property of the event channel. As soon as the service is registered, an event channel is set with a listener. It has like a stream handler listener. So these are the override values of the stream handler. So as soon as things get like registered, when you also maintain the property of event sync. So the sync is like a pipe where you drop the events to the pipe from the Android side, and as soon as you give some data to the event sync, the dart side gets the values, like receives the values, and these events happen like even in the background. So that's a trick over there. So what I'm doing is as soon as this like is registered, I'm like starting the transition activity. So I made a demo using transition API, but if you guys like want to know, learn like what I'm doing with the transition API, how did I do it? I just followed this documentation and this code lab pretty easy. So as soon as the event channel is like, I mean, if you look at this code, as soon as it's done, everything's perfect. I'm like starting the transition activity. So if you're like, or if your device is like OD or above, if you're doing any kind of like foreground notification, and if you want to run anything in the background, you should have like a foreground notification. So I did the foreground notification. That's like a pretty basic thing. And later I'm having a receiver that's called transition receiver. So what happens is the receiver is as soon as you get like events from the activity. So the activity can be walking when you're still and when your vehicle are running. So what happens is if there's any change in the activities in these mentioned activities, your uh, your broadcast receiver, I mean the receiver which you're registering, your transition receiver will get these values. So I'm passing down the event sync inside this receiver so that whenever you get like results like changing the activities, like when you're moving the activities from walking to driving to running or whatever, like vice versa, what it does, like it also, I mean, just like a helper thing, I just converted the activity values to walking or not, and I'm also updating the notification. That's the reason when you're like walking, uh, I'm changing the notifications here, and also ch- with the notification change, I'm also sending values through event sync to dart code. If you see here, after update notification, here I'm using, so there's one more thing. When you're like using event channels in any background stuff, you have to make sure that you have to send any kind of data using main thread only. So you better be careful with that. So what I'm doing is as soon as I update the notification, I'm also sending the info value. This is the same info value which you receive here, like on the screen. That's the same info value which you receive on the screen. Yep, this looks like a pretty complicated, but once you look at this stuff like bitwise, then you can understand like what I've done. So first thing you have to know about like is platform channels, the way how you communicate between Android or iOS code platform based stuff to Dart to those code platform stuff. Like the way of communication is done through platform channels. And here I used background services. So you have to learn about services. And I took an example called like activity transition. Then and I used this thing in background services so that even if you force close the app, it just closes. But coming to my research, what I understood is like uh, there's no real background service like for Flutter. I mean, there's no widget or something where you can do it for both Android and iOS. And and I know that you will guys will feel like, oh man, we have to write a lot of platform code for this thing, but I'm sorry, you have to do it because I didn't find any kind of stuff. I have learned about isolates. I was like pretty, so I've seen about dot isolates. I thought like we can do some crazy stuff using isolates. But what I listened is, or I mean, what I saw is you can do some background stuff using isolates, but you cannot do platform channels. You cannot use platform channels in isolates. So that's like a no thing for me. And if you want to learn more about the isolates, just look at dot isolates, and maybe you can like do dot isolates. And yeah, there are like a lot of stuff. You can look at like isolate. I don't. Yeah, this isolate class. Maybe look at this and learn more. Well, I'm posting this code in the description. I mean, in the GitHub link, and please give me feedback. And if you want to learn more, let me know. I'm gonna do more content. Uh, just give me a feedback, guys. I'll be like much more. I'll try to be. I'll try to post as many videos as possible. Thank you.